Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you did nothing? I mean, truly nothing. No phone, no Netflix, no to-do lists. Just you, alone with your thoughts. For most of us, that idea feels alien, maybe even terrifying. Silence isn't just uncomfortable, it's painful. But here's the irony. In a world that worships hustle, the most radical thing you can do is stop, sit, breathe. Because hidden in that quiet space is a power so profound, it rewires your brain, sharpens your intuition, and unlocks creativity even Einstein would envy. Let me show you what I mean. In 2011, neuroscientists at Harvard made a shocking discovery. They found that when we're doing nothing, no tasks, no distractions, our brains light up like a Christmas tree. The default mode network activates. This is where magic happens. Problem solving, empathy, even our sense of self. But here's the catch. Most of us haven't experienced real stillness in years. We've become addicted to noise. Think about it. We wake up to alarms, commute with podcasts, work with emails pinging, unwind with Netflix, and fall asleep to ASMR. Silence isn't just rare, it's taboo. We've been conditioned to believe that stillness is lazy, unproductive, dangerous. But why? Centuries ago, Blaise Pascal wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." And he was right. Silence forces us to confront what we've been running from, our fears, regrets, and the haunting question, is this all there is? Yet every great breakthrough in history came from stillness. Einstein theorized relativity while daydreaming at his patent office desk. Buddha attained enlightenment under a Bodhi tree. Steve Jobs designed the iPhone after years of Zen meditation. Stillness isn't empty, it's the soil where genius grows. But there's a darker reason we avoid it. Silence terrifies the ego, the part of you that craves validation, clings to identity, and whispers, "You're not enough." When you're still, the ego loses its power. There's no Instagram likes to chase, no promotions to obsess over. Just you, raw, unfiltered, and infinitely powerful. Here's the truth. Your mind is like a snow globe. Shake it non-stop, and everything's a blur. Let it settle, and suddenly, you see clearly. That's why the ancient Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, staring into the void of worst-case scenarios, not to fear them, but to realize, I am still here, I am unbroken. But how do we start? How do we embrace something that feels so unnatural? It begins with a single act of rebellion, a 5-minute pause, a breath, a decision to stop letting the world dictate your worth. Because stillness isn't about escaping life, it's about finally showing up for it. Imagine a wave crashing on rocks, then smoothing into calm water. That's the power of stillness. It doesn't erase chaos, it teaches you to float above it. So let's dissect the modern myth of productivity and why your brain isn't broken, just exhausted. Take 3 deep breaths right now, in and out. Let your shoulders drop. Feel that? That's the first whisper of stillness. And trust me, this is just the beginning. But let's get real for a moment. If stillness is so powerful, why does modern life feel like a treadmill we can't step off? You wake up, check emails, rush through meals, juggle deadlines, collapse into bed, only to repeat it all tomorrow. We've been sold a lie that productivity equals worth, that busyness is a badge of honor. But here's the truth your boss won't tell you. The brain isn't designed to run non-stop. It's a muscle, not a machine. And like any muscle, it fatigues. Take Sarah, a high-powered lawyer I spoke to last week. She billed 80-hour weeks, climbed the corporate ladder, and owned a home straight out of a magazine. But one morning, she collapsed in her office, not from exhaustion, but from emptiness. I felt like a ghost, she told me. I'd achieved everything I thought I wanted, but I'd forgotten how to be. Sarah's story isn't rare. A 2023 Gallup study found that 76% of people feel chronically detached from their lives, even when outwardly successful. This isn't an accident. The cult of productivity thrives on keeping us distracted. Every ping, notification, and deadline is a brick in the wall between you and your inner self. Ancient Stoics like Seneca warned about this 2,000 years ago. You are shirking life if you're too busy to notice the hourglass draining. But today, it's worse. We've outsourced our attention to algorithms designed to addict us. Dopamine hits from likes, shares, and promotions keep us chasing carrots that don't nourish. And here's the cruel twist. The more we achieve, the more we need to achieve. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. Neuroscientists call it dopamine dysregulation. I call it a prison of our own making. Because when you tie your worth to output, you hand over the keys to your peace. But what if I told you there's a loophole? A way to step off the treadmill without losing your edge? Think of the greatest athletes, Serena Williams, Michael Phelps. Their secret isn't relentless training, it's strategic rest. The pause between the notes that makes the music. Stillness isn't the enemy of success, it's the foundation. Consider Silicon Valley. The same tech giants pushing hustle culture have meditation rooms and mindfulness coaches. Google's Search Inside Yourself program isn't corporate fluff, it's a survival tactic, because they know a burnt-out brain can't innovate. A study in Nature proved that engineers who practiced daily stillness solved complex problems 34% faster than their overworked peers. So why does society still shame us for slowing down? Because stillness is revolutionary. It's a rejection of the script that says you must earn your right to exist. The Taoists called this Wu Wei, action through non-action. Not laziness, but alignment. Like a river finding its course without forcing. But alignment requires courage. Courage to sit with the discomfort of not being needed for 5 minutes. To ignore the voice that says, you're wasting time. Because here's the paradox. When you stop trying to control everything, you gain control. When you stop chasing clarity, it finds you. So let's talk about how to reclaim what's been stolen. Not through more effort, but through surrender. Through the art of doing less to become more. Surrender sounds poetic, doesn't it? Like lying in a field of wildflowers while the universe hands you epiphanies. But let's be honest, for most of us, surrender feels less like enlightenment and more like suffocating. Because stillness isn't passive, it's a demolition. A dismantling of everything you've been taught to value. Take the samurai. These warriors weren't just masters of the sword, they were disciples of stillness. Before battle, they'd sit in zazen, a meditation so deep their heart rates dropped to 30 beats per minute. They called it the calm eye of the storm, where time slowed and instinct took over. Modern science backs this. A study in Cell Reports found that trained meditators process threats 40% faster than non-practitioners. Not because they're zen, but because stillness sharpens the brain's threat detection circuits. But here's the problem. You don't need a samurai's discipline. You need something far simpler. A way to hack the habit of chaos. Let's talk about the 5-minute stillness protocol, a method so counterintuitive it's been banned in certain corporate wellness programs. Why? Because calm employees are harder to control. Here's how it works. Every day, pick a mundane task, brushing your teeth, waiting for coffee to brew, sitting in traffic, and do it absolutely silently. No podcasts, no music, no mental to-do lists, just you and the raw sensory experience. Feel the bristles against your gums. Smell the bitterness of the coffee grounds. Hear the hum of the engine. This isn't mindfulness, it's mindfulness warfare. You're retraining your brain to find nourishment in the mundane. But why does this work? Because your brain is a prediction machine. It craves novelty to avoid boredom, a survival holdover from when monotony meant danger. But in stillness, you short-circuit that loop. You teach your nervous system. Safety isn't out there, it's in here. The ancient Greeks had a word for this, hesychia. It meant inner tranquility, but literally translates to the cessation of noise. Desert monks would spend decades in caves mastering it. But you don't need a cave, you need a crack in the routine. A single moment where you choose presence over panic. I'll give you an example. In 2017, a group of MIT engineers wired Buddhist monks to EEG machines during meditation. At peak stillness, their brainwaves didn't flatline, they synchronized. Gamma waves, linked to insight, spiked 800% higher than average. One monk described it as waking up inside a dream. But here's what's wild. You don't need 10,000 hours of meditation to tap this. Neuroplasticity means even 5 minutes daily can rewire your default settings. Yet, we resist. We'd rather drown in noise than face the quiet. Why? Because stillness reveals the lies we've mistaken for truth, the career that's suffocating you, the relationship that's grown stale, the version of success you never chose. It's easier to stay busy than to ask, who am I beneath all this doing? But what if I told you the answer isn't in thinking, but in unthinking? In letting the mind's chatter fade like static until all that's left is the signal. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote his deepest insights not in grand speeches, but in private journals, moments of brutal self-honesty only stillness could birth. So where do we begin? With the hardest step, trusting that less is more, that emptiness is fertile, that the voice saying, "This is a waste of time," is the very fear you need to outgrow. But be warned, the mind fights dirty. Just as you start to settle, it'll ambush you with urgent to-dos, phantom insecurities, and the siren song of productivity. Which brings us to the heart of the battle, the ego's last stand. The ego doesn't go down without a fight. It's cunning. It'll disguise resistance as productivity, fear as ambition, and self-sabotage as common sense. Think of it as a guard dog that spent years barking at shadows. When you sit in silence, it panics. Who will you be without the hustle, without the drama, without the story of your suffering? Freud called this the death drive, the subconscious urge to cling to familiar pain rather than risk the unknown. Modern psychologists call it self-sabotage. I call it the ego's final trick, making you believe that stillness is the enemy, not the escape. Let me explain. Your ego isn't you. It's a character you've been cast to play since childhood. The overachiever, the people pleaser, the victim, the hero. These roles gave you safety, validation, a sense of control. But silence strips them away. Suddenly, you're not the busy CEO or tireless parent. You're just human, raw, unscripted. And to the ego, that's annihilation. Here's how it plays out. You finally carve out 10 minutes for stillness. You sit, breathe. Then, ping, a text arrives. Shouldn't you answer that? What if it's urgent? Your heart races. The ego's whispering, "See, you're needed. You matter." But here's the truth it's hiding. That text isn't urgent. The ego just needs you to believe it is. Because if you stay still, you might realize you don't need external validation to exist. Neuroscience reveals why this feels so visceral. When you ignore the ego's emergencies, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, floods your body with cortisol. It's the same chemical surge that kept our ancestors alive in lion attacks. But today, The lion is a Slack notification. The ego weaponizes biology to keep you addicted to noise. But there's a way to disarm it. A practice borrowed from Zen masters and Navy SEALs alike. Label the lie. When the ego whispers, "You're wasting time," silently reply, "That's the fear talking." When it hisses, "You'll fall behind," counter, "That's the addiction to chaos." This isn't positive thinking, it's forensic thinking. You're dissecting the ego's fiction, thread by thread. Take James, a startup founder I coached. He'd built his identity on the grind. But during a silent retreat, his mind erupted. "You're failing your team. You're weak. You'll lose everything." Instead of fleeing, he wrote each thought down and labeled it. Ego story. Chapter 1, collapse. By day 3, the stories lost their grip. "It was like unmasking a troll online," he said. "Once you see the mechanism, the fear can't control you." This is why the ego hates stillness. Silence is a mirror. It reflects the stories you've mistaken for reality, the not enough narrative, the imposter syndrome, the relentless more, more, more. But here's the secret. You don't have to believe them. The Tao Te Ching says it best. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Yet society sides with the ego. We're taught to pathologize stillness, to call it lazy or self-indulgent. But think of a tree in winter. Its leaves fall, its energy withdraws inward. Is the tree failing? Number. It's gathering strength to bloom again. You're no different. Stillness isn't retreat, it's renewal. But the battle isn't just internal. There's an external cost to choosing stillness. Friends may mock your hippie habits. Colleagues may mistake your calm for complacency. Even loved ones might resent your boundaries. Because when you stop playing your assigned role, it holds up a mirror to their unrest. So, how do you stay the course? How do you silence the critics, outer and inner, long enough to let stillness root? The answer lies in a truth so ancient, it's carved into temple walls and quantum physics alike. The ancient truth is this: you cannot pour from an empty cup. Yet society has twisted this into a guilt trip. Self-care is sold as bubble baths and scented candles, luxuries for the privileged. But true self-care is far more subversive. It's the refusal to let the world drain you. The insistence that your worth isn't a resource to be mined. Let's dissect the lie. When you prioritize stillness, you'll hear it everywhere. You're being selfish. But selfish to whom? The boss who profits from your burnout? The algorithm feeding on your attention? The friends who prefer you as a mirror for their chaos? The accusation isn't about your greed, it's about their discomfort. Because when you stop burning out, you expose the absurdity of the grind. Take Maya, a nurse and mother of 3. For years, she woke at 5 a.m., skipped meals, and collapsed into bed after midnight. When she started carving out 20 minutes daily for silent reflection, her family revolted. "Mom's being weird," her teens joked. Her husband worried. "Are you depressed?" But within weeks, Maya noticed something. Her patience deepened. She stopped snapping at her kids. She handled ER shifts with eerie calm. "I thought I was being selfish," she told me. "Turns out, I was becoming present." Aristotle saw this coming. He argued that true ethics begin with self-awareness. You can't act justly toward others if you're deaf to your own soul. Modern studies agree. A Yale paper found that people who practice daily stillness are 47% more likely to help strangers, donate to charity, or intervene in crises. Why? Because inner stillness dissolves the us versus them divide. You stop seeing people as tasks or threats and start seeing them as human. But society's resistance runs deeper. We've conflated busy with important, noise with value. Think of the CEO who brags about 4 hours of sleep, the influencer posting #hustleporn at 2 a.m., the parent martyred by PTA meetings. It's a collective delusion, a Stockholm syndrome for productivity. Even science has been weaponized. Critics cite Darwin, survival of the fittest. But they ignore the full story. Evolution rewards adaptability, not exhaustion. Wolves don't hunt 24/7. Lions lounge in the savannah sun. Only humans glorify self-destruction as a virtue. So how do we reclaim stillness without apology? Start by redefining selfish. The word comes from the Old English asterisk, selfish asterisk, literally, devoted to oneself. But devotion isn't the same as indulgence. A musician devoted to her craft isn't selfish. She's honing a gift to share with the world. Stillness works the same way. It's devotion to the inner wellspring that fuels everything else. The Stoics had a mantra: you own the universe if you own your mind. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire by rising before dawn to journal. Winston Churchill painted landscapes during World War II to stay sane. Einstein played violin to untangle relativity. Their selfish rituals weren't escapes, they were lifelines. But here's the hardest truth: stillness requires boundaries. And boundaries piss people off. You'll disappoint others to honor yourself. You'll say no to brunch invites, late-night emails, and performative hustle. Some will call you cold. Others will accuse you of betrayal. Let them. As psychologist Nedra Glover-Tawwab says, the cost of silence is greater than the cost of disappointment. Remember the airline safety drill. Secure your oxygen mask first before assisting others. It's not a metaphor, it's physics. Hypoxia clouds judgment. You can't save anyone if you're gasping for air. Stillness is that oxygen mask. It's not selfish, it's survival. And survival is just the beginning. Because when you breathe deeply, you start to see the world differently. Colors sharpen, time expands. Problems that seemed insurmountable reveal hidden doors. But this isn't magic, it's biology. Stillness lowers cortisol, boosts gray matter density, and activates the prefrontal cortex. You're not zoning out, you're upgrading your operating system. Yet the final hurdle remains. How do we weave this into the fabric of daily life? How do we stay still in a world that never stops? The answer isn't in grand gestures, but in stolen moments, in the spaces between. The answer is simpler than you think. You don't need a Himalayan cave or a 4 a.m. meditation cushion. Stillness thrives in the cracks of routine, the red lights, elevator rides, and coffee breaks we've been trained to fill with distraction. This is where the battle is won, not in grand declarations, but in micro moments of rebellion. Let's start with your morning ritual. Not the performative self-care you see on TikTok, but something primal. Before you check your phone, before you speak, before you even open your eyes, take 10 seconds. Feel the weight of your body on the mattress. Hear the hum of the world waking up. Taste the stillness lingering in the air. This isn't meditation, it's reclamation. A silent vow. Today, I will not be owned. Then, weaponize waiting. Standing in line, don't reach for your phone. Notice the way light bends through windows. Feel the texture of your breath, cool entering nostrils, warm leaving lips. The Japanese call this ma, the art of honoring negative space. In a 2022 MIT study, participants who practiced waiting stillness reported 30% less anxiety than those who defaulted to scrolling. Why? Because boredom isn't the enemy. It's the gateway to presence. But let's get tactical. Here's a trick stolen from war zones and kindergarten classrooms. The glitch method. Every time you switch tasks, close a tab, finish a call, walk through a doorway, freeze for 3 breaths. Inhale, I release what's done. Exhale, I welcome what's next. This isn't spiritual fluff, it's neural hygiene. Studies show task switching without pauses increases cortisol by 58%. 3 breaths resets your brain's RAM. Now, the ultimate hack, scheduled defiance. Block 12 minutes daily, set a calendar alert titled Urgent for absolutely nothing. Not journaling, not yoga, just sit, stare at a wall, let your mind unravel. The first week, it'll feel like withdrawal, itchy, maddening, pointless. But by day 10, something shifts. A 2023 Stanford study found that participants who practiced wall staring reported surges in creativity and decision-making clarity. Why? Because idle brains synthesize ideas that busy brains miss. Take Carlos, a barista in Madrid. He started using his subway commute for active stillness. No headphones, no phone, just observing. At first, I felt naked, he told me. But then I noticed things, the way sunlight hit graffiti, the rhythm of strangers' footsteps. Now, I come up with latte art designs mid-commute. My boss thinks I'm a genius. Really, I'm just bored. But here's the catch. Stillness isn't a productivity hack. That's the ego's last trick, commodifying your peace. True stillness has no ROI, no KPI. It's the anti-hustle. The Stoics knew this. Seneca wrote letters by candlelight not to optimize his day, but to touch eternity in the flicker of a flame. Yet resistance will roar. You don't have 12 minutes. It'll lie. What about the kids, the deadlines, the laundry? Here's the truth. You don't find time for stillness. You steal it, like a prisoner tunneling out with a spoon. Every stolen minute is a declaration. I am more than a cog, more than a profile. I am alive. And alive is contagious. When you stop rushing, others slow down. When you stop reacting, others reflect. A 2019 Harvard study proved that calm individuals lower collective stress hormones in groups by 38%. Your stillness isn't just yours, it's a tuning fork for the world. But the final frontier isn't your schedule, it's your identity. Who are you when the noise stops? When the titles fade? When the achievements gather dust? This is where stillness becomes alchemy, turning the lead of your fears into the gold of your essence. The answer won't come in words. It'll arrive as a shiver at sunset, a laugh that cracks you open, a silence so deep you hear your own heartbeat syncing with the pulse of the planet. This is how revolutions begin, not with a bang, but with a breath. Think of stillness as a stone dropped into a pond. The ripples reach further than you'd ever imagine. In 1965, a single monk sitting silently in a Paris park drew crowds that sparked a movement. No speeches, no slogans, just presence. And in that quiet, something shifted. Strangers began talking. Tensions softened. Studies later proved what ancient cultures knew. Collective calm is contagious. When you choose stillness, you don't just change yourself, you change the room. But here's what no one admits. Stillness terrifies systems built on chaos. Algorithms feed on your frenzy. Economies profit from your panic. Yet when you step off the treadmill, you expose the lie that busyness equals purpose. Take Iceland. After a financial crash, they prioritized public saunas and silence over austerity. Crime rates dropped, creativity soared. Their cure wasn't hustle, it was space. Now imagine this scaled. Workplaces that begin meetings with a breath. Schools that teach kids to pause before reacting. Cities with quiet hours where honking is illegal. This isn't fantasy, it's physics. Stillness lowers collective cortisol, syncs heartbeats, and turns strangers into allies. But the deepest shift isn't out there, it's in the mirror. Because when the world stops dictating your worth, you're forced to ask, who am I beneath the noise? The question isn't rhetorical. Neuroscience confirms that 95% of your identity is a story, a patchwork of memories, labels, and expectations. But strip away the roles, parent, employee, achiever, and what's left? In 2022, Kyoto University researchers found that prolonged stillness activates the posterior cingulate cortex, the brain region that answers the question, who am I when no one is watching? Meet Lila, a former Fortune 500 exec. For years, she defined herself by titles and accolades. Then, during a silent retreat, she broke down sobbing. I realized I didn't know my favorite color, she said. I'd outsourced my soul to LinkedIn. Lila's story isn't unique. A Cambridge study found that 68% of people can't describe themselves without referencing their job or relationships. Stillness isn't just peace, it's reclamation. But unmasking terrifies us. We cling to personas like armor. The poet Rumi warned, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." Stillness dissolves the drop, returning you to the vastness. Yet society calls this dissociation. They're wrong. This is association with the raw, unedited truth of your existence. Here's the paradox. The more you shed these layers, the more alive you become. Think of a Russian nesting doll. Peel away busy parent, striver, perfectionist, and at the core, not emptiness, potential. A 2023 Johns Hopkins study found that people who practice stillness report 53% stronger intuition, not because they're enlightened, but because they've silenced the static clouding their inner voice. But the journey doesn't end here. Once you've unmasked yourself, the world starts to shift. Relationships deepen, choices clarify. Even suffering transforms, from a curse to a teacher. As Carl Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Yet, awakening is just the first step. Now comes the real test. Staying awake in a world addicted to sleepwalking. Rebellion conjures images of protests and picket signs, but the most potent uprisings are silent. In 2016, Finnish schools replaced homework with mindful downtime. Test scores rose, bullying plummeted. Teachers reported students solving conflicts with eerie maturity. When asked why, a 12-year-old said, "When you're not always rushing, you see people better." This isn't idealism, it's evolution. Studies show that groups who meditate together synchronize brainwaves within minutes. Your stillness isn't a solo act, it's a chord in humanity's symphony. The catch? Systems built on chaos will resist. Corporations profit from your anxiety. Algorithms thrive on your fragmentation. Stillness is kryptonite to the attention economy, but you hold the power. In 2020, a tech worker named Raj started coding in 90-minute silent sprints. No Slack, no music. His productivity tripled. Soon, his team adopted the practice. Within months, their startup became the first quiet unicorn, valued at $1 billion without a single burnout case. "We didn't hustle harder," Raj said. "We hustled quieter." History's greatest shifts began this way. Rosa Parks's quiet no on a Montgomery bus. Gandhi's Salt March stepped in silence. Even MLK's "I Have a Dream" speech was drafted during a 3 a.m. stillness ritual. Revolution doesn't roar, it whispers. Now imagine scaling this. Cities with quiet hours where honking is banned. Workplaces where meetings begin with a breath. Schools where kids learn to listen to their bodies before equations. This isn't utopia. Barcelona's superblocks experiment, car-free zones with meditation plazas, reduced hospital visits by 19% in a year. But the final frontier isn't out there, it's in the mirror. Because once you've tasted stillness, you can't unlearn its truth, that you are not a machine, not a brand, not a metric. You are a living, breathing universe, and every moment of silence is a big bang in miniature. Einstein once wrote, "People like us believe physics is timeless, but the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." Modern quantum theorists agree. Time isn't linear, it's a perception. And stillness? It's the wormhole that collapses the illusion. Think of the last time you lost yourself in a moment. A child's laugh, a sunset, a lover's touch. Time didn't vanish, it expanded. Neuroscientists call this flow state. Mystics call it the eternal now. Both are right. In stillness, you step outside the clock and into the infinite. But how do we live here? Not as monks or hermits, but as humans drowning in deadlines. The answer hides in plain sight. Stillness isn't a place you go. It's a lens you wear. A lens that turns traffic jams into poetry, the rhythm of blinkers, the dance of shadows. That transforms small talk into soul talk, a barista's sigh, a stranger's fleeting smile. That rewrites your obituary from "she got a lot done" to "she was fully here." The final experiment, for one day, replace "how productive was I" with "how present was I." Track moments of pure aliveness, the steam off your coffee, the ache in your feet after a walk, the way moonlight pools on your floor. These aren't distractions, they're the curriculum. As the Sufi poet Hafez wrote, "Now is the time to know that all you do is sacred." But sacred doesn't mean solemn, it means seen. When you stop chasing the next moment, this one becomes enough. More than enough, a mosaic of miracles. So let's end where we began, with a question. Not, when was the last time you did nothing? But, when will you realize you've always been enough? The answer isn't in words, it's in the silence between them, in the breath you're taking right now, in the universe whispering back, "You are here, you are whole, you are home." Now, go live like you believe it.